publisher behind characters and stories like Kingsman and Old Man Logan. The acquisition is Netflix's latest move to bolster its own content instead of just licensing it. This is rival media companies like Sony and Disney become wary of providing content to streaming services as popularity of sites like Netflix looms as a major threat. Joining us now from LA, our Bloomberg reporter Lucas Shaw, and still with me, Technalysis Research President Bob O'Donnell. Lucas, I'll start with you. Of all the acquisitions out there, why Millarworld as their first buy?
A big part of it coming off that Disney segment is because Disney, Time Warner, they already have these pipelines of comic book materials from which they can use, and right now all of the TV shows and movies that Netflix offers on its service are, or at least most of them, are from Disney. They're TV shows that Marvel owns and produces. They're movies that Netflix licenses after they appear in theaters, and Netflix wants its own pipeline of original comic book materials that it can develop, it can own, it can exploit down the road if it wants to make T-shirts or lunchboxes or a theme park ride.
Bob, what's your take? Is this a smart deal?
I think it is, because I think what we're seeing is, you mentioned it, you mentioned Netflix as a media company, right? That's different than Netflix as a streaming company. And for them to become a media company, they have to buy and create this original content.
That's very true.
Stickiness in your service, that's the kind of move you have to make. We see this with Amazon doing that for their Prime Video service, with Netflix doing this. I expect we'll see more of this, and I also expect that this is a bit of a challenge for a company like Apple, who's talked about doing this, because it's not clear what their commitment is there yet.
It's interesting because when I spoke with Tim Cook after earnings last week, I asked him about their video and original content efforts, and he said, again, it's very, very experimental. What do you think this means, Lucas, for other big media players and perhaps some unconventional players, a tech giant like Apple?
I think the traditional guys, your Disney, Fox, Time Warner, CBS, Viacom, are very, they're intrigued by this. They're not quite sure what to make of it. I had a couple of different people I spoke with today try to ask me to explain it. Netflix has never bought anything before. As you said, this seems like a little bit of an outlier. It doesn't necessarily mean they're going to be out there buying a bunch of libraries, but it opens the door to that possibility. And it just reinforces that Netflix wants to be ready for a world where no one's going to license them a whole lot. We've seen these big companies gradually retrench and revise their strategy because they felt like they were giving some of their most valuable IP away to let Netflix build its service. As for the new players, we report obsessively on companies like Apple and Facebook and Google and what they're doing, but we've really reached a point where in terms of media creation, production, ownership, development, Netflix and Amazon are really on another plane from those companies. Netflix and Amazon are making as much TV as the biggest media companies out there. They're streaming it all over the world. Apple and Facebook and those guys are still dipping their toes.
Hulu just had its first hit, The Handmaid's Tale, after many, many years of trying in original content. Does the fact that Amazon and Netflix, Bob, are so far ahead mean nobody else stands a chance?
No, I still think there's
if they
opportunity.
invest billions of dollars, certainly.
The content creation business is tough, right? There's decades of history of how difficult it is to make that a successful business, and it's a hard skill to acquire. And clearly, you're seeing a lot of efforts, a lot more of the tech industry, marrying up with Hollywood and other places around the world, Bollywood, where have you, to try and come up with compelling original content. Because ultimately, as he said, the notion of all of that content being given to Netflix for them to, not given, but licensed to Netflix to use, that may go away. So they have to be prepared if they want to survive long term as a media company, and we have to start thinking of them in that regard.
All right, Bob O'Donnell, president of Technalysis, thank you so much for joining us. Lucas Shaw, our Bloomberg reporter in Hollywood, thank you as always.